I find something that's missing from the White Flare Zealot crafts is just that tangible feeling of fear as they're charging towards you. You should know that if they make contact with you, you are certainly going to die. Here's the Vivisector, a White Flare's Zealot fan build that I've been working on for quite some time now. So, for weapons and armament, well, she costs 540,000 materials, 25% armor cost, so fairly beefy for a ramming vehicle, and 300 laser firepower with no other sources of damage. Her main armament is this laser cutter that runs the majority of the length of the ship. It uses the laser cutter, which does 10 times damage at 10 times AP, so in theory that's about 500,000 damage per second off of nothing other than pumping power at 600 AP, so there's really nothing that will defend you from that. You can't really make a craft in Neater that won't die unless you're just too large to get the sword through, which is going to be a very large craft. And then at the spine, there's 2 large steam drills, and they connect via struts to hold this on. The idea is that the entire body of the sword needs to be immune to impact damage and as tough as possible. Now, she can move more than 3 meters in one tick, so just 3 meters of cutting surface is maybe not enough. And in truth, the steam engine could be split into 2 medium or small steam engines on either side, and the sword could be extended. It'd probably be a good idea. Also, maybe add either another steam drill or just space these out more so that one explosion is less likely to take them both out. Some potential improvements for similar craft. Now, to keep her airborne, there's a lot of ion jets to help her get back out of the water. It's probably actually more efficient because she doesn't need to go into space to make these half jet engines and half propellers. I believe they'll give her the same amount of thrust and just be cheaper and have better thrust to power. There are some upward thrusting CJEs here that are very powerful, and then some kind of wimpy turning ones. These used to be upward ones, but then I realized she didn't really need any more pitch up, but needed a lot better turning, so these got jammed in later. They're not great, but given that I'd already laid out the space for these guys, they're kind of what I was stuck with. Bunch of CJEs at the rear, which do differential turning as well as some thrust vectoring to help her maneuver quite a bit. Without them, she really doesn't turn fast enough. And then she does have some simple weapon rams sprinkled around to either guard against hitting superstructures. If she gets lucky, she can sometimes hit with one of these, but I can really only afford so much drag, so I kind of put these on sparingly. And then she's got lambs. Lambs don't have a minimum energy setting for them, no hold fire, so these can be a bit of a liability. Still probably worth it, but it's a bit debatable. And then 1 laser turret to take out flyers, but can't help but killing the enemy vehicle. I have it set to a 9% hold fire, so usually provides enough energy left over in the tanks to cut through most enemy vehicles. You don't need much. Okay, let's demonstrate one of her greatest strengths, and we'll spawn in the Stronghold for that. I'm not going to let the Stronghold shoot back, and I'm not going to let us take damage either, because we're just testing out firepower here. So this could be disrupted by either us colliding with the superstructure, some explosive from her killing the sword. Now let's turn that off too. So here we are doing our PN guidance things. Our control responses are very slow, and there's not much I can do about that. We're a heavy craft. It does mean that we have issues sometimes. Still, this wasn't a bad collision. We weren't off the desired point by that much, and frontsiders, even as slow as this, can be notoriously difficult to hit because they'll forward, reverse, turn, all that stuff. Whereas if we're coming in from the broadside on a broadsider, all that they can do is turn. And that doesn't affect us that much because it's, along the same vector that we're coming in at. It's not that useful. But, so, even something as tough as the Strongholds is just easily sectioned by us. As long as we get a good hit, which we haven't done here, we really just missed by a little bit both times. It's going to be a one-hit kill. So that does mean that I could cut back a lot on laser firepower, but I only want to do that if I'm building a smaller craft. And the thing is, I need a sword this big. Not bonk on the superstructure, or rather that turret really, but still did get through. And in 3 passes, she's dead. Would have been 1 with better accuracy, but this is really the best I was doing off of the breadboard that I have. So it's good enough. Okay, so let's look at some battles against actual enemy vehicles that I will allow to fight back against us. So the Annihilaris, quite a bit cheaper than us, but the reason I'm doing this is because most ramming vehicles will have an issue in the circumstance. However, since we use lasers, we do not have to worry so much about that. The issue is ramming the Annihilaris can actually be really tricky because she has a very tight turning radius. Still not a terrible hit, especially given that bonk against her let us slide a little bit more. It would have been a much better hit otherwise. We do have an issue that we try to go 20 meters above enemies, so if we were actually trying to ram these planes, we would climb above them and then not be able to shoot at them properly. But as long as we're trying to shoot the Annihilaris, or trying to ram the Annihilaris, shooting the planes is easy. And looks like we're coming through to finish off the Annihilaris, and that should be all for her. We left the plane in the water. This is going to take us forever. So, now, of course, we could be using other weapons other than lasers, because, you know, if we were just using simple rams and steam drills and that sort of stuff, well, we'd have less melee damage, but we could do a lot with other weapons. So maybe we could have something like crams or some pretty painful APS or packs that would make up for it. So really tall vehicles like this obviously give us a lot of trouble. This is one of the downsides to laser cutters. However, with some pain to us, which we smashed in a little bit, we did make it through. And, well, okay, so the Rhea doesn't have scuttle settings, and unfortunately for us, she kept the front half instead of the back half. We're also coming around very early because of our time-based attacks and the slowness of which we got through. But the Rhea is not going to survive a second hit. We've got a few things that are roughly in our price range. They're a bit more expensive, 700,000 versus 540. But let's pick the Harbinger. I don't think it matters that much. They're pretty similar. Harbinger is supposedly one of the slightly harder ones. Our shield coverage is a bit sparing, so we have the engine power to have more. I could have put more on. Looks like we're getting a pretty decent collision here, just behind the 2 front turrets. Hit the superstructure, but I think we might have actually got it with a ram, because I would have expected to take more damage otherwise. And that's good enough for a low health. And even if it wasn't, it's always just getting just behind those front turrets is really where you want to be. Okay, let's take a look at one of the harder potential enemies, and that's the Tyr. We certainly don't have a 100% win rate against her, because we have to kill her on the first pass, and that just does not always happen. Her weapons are terrifying. A lot stronger than they used to be since she's been upgraded, and her armor's chunky enough that it can actually take us a while to chew through it. Get a nice hit on her turret cap there with our ram, which is really what we want, but we're sticking somewhere. Oh, we're stuck on her barrels. So, to me, I kind of consider that a bug. We're probably stuck on our barrels again, actually. Yeah, I think we're having some severe issues with getting through barrels. But it looks like we took out both turrets there, chopped the front off, and she's down to not a lot of firepower. This is not going to end well for her. So those issues with the barrels, they are really bad for us. It's actually one of the biggest weaknesses to this craft, is that you can apparently run into barrels at whatever their elevation is, but I think you can only hit them at their original position. And the tier is one of the crafts that give us the most trouble because of that. There are a few others. I might put one as the next clip. But yeah, it's just not a great situation. We're overcompensating a little bit, I think, here. So we're going to hit way forward of where we want to hit. And I'm not going to watch the next few passes. It's going to take us a while if we do that again, but usually it only takes 2 passes at the worst to kill the tier. So one of the other frustrating enemies that you think would be very easy is the Bulwark. The Bulwark, being very slow to turn into a broadside, makes it so that we come in with a not great angle, and has a lot of barrels that are kind of long and can really poke into us sometimes. Looks like we got collision damage there, which is pretty rare, so we actually got through. A lot of the time we'll bonk off the barrels with no damage and just slide around the Bulwark. But actually got a really satisfying cut that, oh, we definitely took a fire off of a dead cannon there. But anyway, got a really satisfying cut that just absolutely destroyed the Bulwark, and that's really what makes this vehicle so much fun to use. Sometimes you just get those hits that just immediately kill an enemy, and it's just not something that you get with any other type of vehicle. So let's just try one of the big white flare ships and just see what happens. You never know. You might get lucky sometimes. Could have tried the Aquila. I have successfully rammed her before. She does a lot of damage, so it's easy for her to hit a critical component before you ram her. And she operates at a high altitude, and because I've been keeping myself at a low altitude, I can't actually get to that altitude before it's too late. So it can be a bit of a problem. It does happen, and it's very fun when it happens. So because we bogged down a little bit, we're just going to take a lot of damage getting stuck in the water here, but this was a fairly successful run otherwise. So we do get out of the water. It's slow. This is just what you have to deal with. Oh no, I don't have lasers either. What you have to deal with using a laser sword, unless I made it way longer, then I might be able to get cleaner cuts. If I was to do that same ram at 0.1 times game speed, we would have sliced clean through her and never ever touched with a sword. So we very nearly got her to a low health despawn. I think we're just barely not going to get it here. Oh man. Yeah, so we spent so much time in the water, just barely didn't get it there. Now I think we just lost a few CJE components, so we're still flying, but we're not flying well enough anymore. Now I think we've lost enough that we're losing some laser components on one side. Depending on what we lose, we can be fairly durable, but we might have a little bit of trouble actually connecting here. Yeah, we're not turning back very well. We can turn one way pretty well, but not the other. It was still enough. Enemy is a large target. And we were able to get the front to fall off, I think. I doubt connection checks. Yeah, we had already dealt enough damage that connection checks weren't happening. She was just despawning. Let's just give the real big boy a try and see what happens. I doubt this is going to go well, but, well, you never know. Let's see what the Redeemer does to us. So far, these shells are not that scary. She's smoking, but it's not like we're going to do that much damage with our laser anyway. Decent defense with the lambs. Taking a few shells that are just not getting there. And she was very polite in letting us ram her, so nothing really to stop us there. And that was probably enough damage on the Redeemer. Yep, 2 damage. You've only got half a ship left. That sloped armor is not going to stop it. Actually, that was just below 80% or below 80% in sinking. That wasn't a 2 damaged. I was celebrating too early. She survived with 65% health, and we went into the water probably from that particle cannon damage because our engine got taken out. It's just one of the unfortunate things that goes with this design is that if you get hit by a big enough pack, yeah, 221 firepower from a particle cannon, that's going to do it. It ruins your day. And even if it didn't take out the engine, if it hit one of the CJEs, we weren't going to ram successfully. So, very nearly a victory for us. Oh, we just hit the superstructure in the wrong spot and lost half of it. But that's just what happens. Until they make larger, simple rams, that's just going to happen sometimes. Taking one last parting shot from the particle cannon, presumably, doing a lot of damage to us. So, we do have the damage to take out these types of vehicles. Really have the high roll to win. Our first cut needed to be good enough to make her despawn. Anyway, that's all that I have for this episode. This is one of the most fun ships that I've built in a while as far as, just watching the combat. I've cut just about every ship in Neater in half, and just wish there were more ships in Neater that I could also cut in half. So, I hope you enjoyed watching, and I'll see you in the future.